admitting them. So I'm just taking a few minutes so that we get the audience in. Just have to be patient for another 2-3 minutes. Maybe we can start now. At least I'll begin my introduction. My name is Preeti Gill, and I run a space called Majha House in Amritsar, which is a physical space. But because of the lockdown, we've not really been able to do very much over there. And we thought that it was a good idea to come to your home instead and bring the Majha House programs to you. And today I'd like to, on behalf of Majha House, welcome all of you and to a very special program that we're going to have today, which is called Are You Future Ready? And this is a talk by Mr. AJAI CHOWDHRY, founder HCL, Padma Bhshan awardee, a leader of industry. And among his many awards and accolades are the Electronic Man of the Year, IT Person of the Year, CNBC Business Award, Cyber Media Business ICT Award, Lifetime Achievement in ICT Award, and etc., etc. I'm also delighted to tell you that he is a patron of Majha House and has supported our initiatives from the very first day that we opened our doors to the world in March 2018. He's always been focused on giving back to society, and there are a number of such initiatives that he works closely with. He's also an angel funder and helps a lot of fledgling organizations. He's an avid reader, very fond of jazz music, and he's a fine collection of art and sculpture. Majha House, as I just said, is a physical space in Amritsar. It's our own home. It's a home that has now become a place that we've opened up to the public. It's a cultural and literary hub, a platform that is liberal, non-intimidating, and open to all shades of opinion. We've held 4 very successful literature festivals and a host of standalone events, each showcasing the best and the most brilliant academics, thinkers, ideators, business leaders, poets, musicians, performers. The lockdown has actually presented us with an opportunity. And so while it's true that all of us are locked into our homes, unable to go out and enjoy a lot of things that happen outside, like cinema and music and theater, yet I think we've all learned how to adapt to the situation, and a lot of us have also embraced the new normal. This lockdown has meant that we've been able to connect with each other and with audiences across the world online. There is now no boundary and no barrier. So also for the programs that we've been doing, we have had now audiences from across the globe who tune in, who listen to us, and who also present talks, or they read their stories or their poems, and they engage in lively discussions with us. Since April 11th, when we presented the first online Adda, we have done programs every Wednesday and Saturday. It's an incredible, I think, 15 or so programs that we've already curated. And for this, I want to thank the dedicated and enthusiastic working committee at Amritsar. Thank you, Tutu, Indu, Niku, Gurpratap, Nazi, Jasmeena, Gurleen, Bhushan, for all that you do to build Majha House into a strong and vibrant space. Let me also introduce you now to ANKUR BISEN, author, friend, head of consumer and retail practice, Technopak, who will engage Mr. Chowdhry in conversation after his talk, which will be about 35 to 40 minutes long. So I'd like you all to sit back and enjoy yourselves. And I would really like it if you left comments about today's session on the Majha House Facebook and Instagram pages. It'll be good to keep this connection going and this conversation going with each one of you. So please do leave a comment over there. Over to you, Mr. Chowdhry, now.
Thank you, Preeti. Well, actually, this subject is something that I've been talking to many people about. And the theme pretty much remains the same, but I keep on adding to it because it's things keep changing, evolving, etc., etc. So the first question that's typically asked of me is, what's the time frame we are looking for as far as COVID is concerned? And frankly, there is a lot of uncertainty around this because we really don't know. But if we look at certain projections that are constantly coming up, and these are all evolving projections, what I can see is that June to August, we are going to pretty much see a spike. And by September, it might just come down. So therefore, COVID is around and it's going to grow. However, you may also see over the next 1.5 years, many W curves, as I call them, where things will come down, go up, come down, go up. And those kind of things might happen, and the governments in different parts of the country may want to close certain areas at certain times, depending on infected islands, as I call them. I guess the things can change only when we start to see a cure or a vaccine. Vaccine seems to be still quite far away, although many people are working over it all over the world. Indian company called Serum Institute talked about it, that they will have it available in October. But that was dependent on the Oxford program, and the Oxford program is not doing that well. So those kind of changes are likely to happen. Typically, it takes 10 years to create a vaccine. Here, as a world, we are trying to create a vaccine in 1 year. So there are lots of challenges. The US has mounted a very special program around on the concept of the Manhattan Project. And the objective is again to crunch the time, but nobody really knows how long it will take. But my guess is that you may see a vaccine probably first part of next year. And by the time all of India gets into a vaccine situation, it could be late 2021 or early 2022. So I think COVID will be around. And some people are working on a cure. Many countries are working on a cure. There are 30 different organizations in India that are working on a cure. And they are all they are going to pretty much do is that if you get COVID, you'll probably have some relief. So some of them are talking about that if you get into a hospital and normal stay is going to be 14, 15 days, a cure will reduce it down by 4 to 5 days. So I think that's really what a cure is likely to do. But if a cure comes along, I think it will give a lot of comfort to people to say, okay, if I get COVID, I can be cured. So I think that looks like a reasonable possibility in the next 2 to 3 months. What they're pretty much doing is they're taking the drugs that are around and repurposing them. So those kind of things are likely to happen. Repurposed drugs. But the challenge that is there in a situation like COVID is that 60% of people could be asymptomatic. So you really don't know who has it and who doesn't. Just by taking temperature outside the door, you can't be sure. So I think the unfortunate part is that the fear of infection will be around for quite a while. Masks, gloves, social distancing, etc., will be the norm, and people will be generally very careful. So if you look at scenarios like, for example, if a TV fails in your home, would you allow a service engineer to enter your house? Okay. And would you go to a restaurant? Would you go buy things from a shop? All these things are a little bit of a question mark today because everybody is pretty concerned. So how do you really plan around this? What does it look like for the next 12 to 18 months that one can see? So if you are in business, for example, I think you're going to see a pretty much a severe impact for the next 6 months. Medium term, 12 months to get to some kind of recovery. I'm not going to say it's a great recovery. So I think what you need to do is to plan very carefully till end of next year. Money will dry up all over the place, whether you're looking at India or the globe. America and Europe have put out so many special programs, but remember, they are just printing money. And what they're doing is that their interest rates are zero. So how far can they go beyond zero is what you need to see. So I think one key thing that needs to be kept in mind by pretty much everybody, and especially those in business, is that cash is going to be king. Conserve cash and depend more on cash flows to run your business rather than thinking about profits. So everyone needs to relook at their plans for next 1.5 to 2 years, because the plan that you made till now is not going to work. Definitely not going to work. And you need to reduce your costs everywhere. So some of the startups that I mentor a lot of startups, and I've invested in about 32 odd startups. A lot of them have temporarily decided their current business is not going to run the way it was. So they have pivoted to looking at COVID type products. Like one of them, who is a robot maker, has actually developed a ventilator which is already getting into market this month. And a rural distribution company which used to sell all kinds of products from phones to all kinds of devices into villages, they have pivoted to selling FMCG products, or the typical, Hindustan lever type of products in the market. So those kind of changes are pretty much there. And when I talk to all of them, I keep telling them, make sure that you involve your whole team in whatever you're doing. Because if you do not involve your team, they will get demotivated. And you need to communicate. So that is very important if you want to keep your teams going as you have been doing till now. So the new normal will be a low-touch way of working, new habits, new regulations, travel restrictions, hygiene restrictions. And you will need to use more and more technology and make your organization or education institute or whatever you are in hugely digital. And therefore, in some manners, work has already moved to the home, and some of that work will stay at home, or as Harvard calls it, work from anywhere. So you will need to make sure that your people who work for you at the front line are also protected. And you need to create low-touch ways of working everywhere. And people are even getting concerned about, should I handle cash? Because in China, they actually burnt a lot of cash and brought out new cash because they were very worried that it will carry infections. Some of these things are taking it too far, but there are all kinds of devices that are available for you to actually make sure that none of these things are actually having the virus. What is happening actually, if you see all around the world, is that pretty much 1/3 or more of the world is under lockdown. And some of them are coming out of the lockdown. A few countries are out of the lockdown. Some didn't even get into lockdown. So they took their own decisions. But one key thing that is happening everywhere, as well as in India, is that we are seeing mass unemployment. And every day I read unfortunate stories of this company, that company releasing 500 people, 1,000 people, 1,500 people, 2,000 people, 5,000 people. So that's a very difficult situation that we are going to face. And will it finally end up with what is called a V curve, which is at this moment we are all going down? And will it suddenly shoot up? I don't think so. Things are probably going to be in a manner a U curve, where things will come down, GDP will come down, business will come down, it'll go flat, and then go up. How long this flat period lasts? Very difficult to predict. But at least I would say till end of next year. So due to COVID, borders will remain closed and could also lead to calls for self-sufficiency and nationalism and Atmanirbhar and those kind of situations. That is happening everywhere in the world. We are not alone. For entry into any country, you may be asked for immune certification or proof of vaccination. And all kinds of supplies from all over the world are getting disrupted. So supply chains are very badly disrupted. Lots and lots of products are no longer available. If you went to Amazon and say, I want to order something, normally things used to arrive in 2 days. Now it's taking 5 days, 7 days, 10 days. Sometimes they even say, I wanted to order a book yesterday and they said it'll take 5 weeks. So things are really not in good shape as far as supply chains are concerned. And various organizations will need to relook at the way they do things. And as I said, low touch way of doing things. So I guess till middle next year or end of next year is only when you can pretty much think in terms of traveling abroad. But domestic tourism to some extent will open up, but it will all depend on the comfort that we all feel in the cleanliness of the place that we go to. So lots and lots of organizations all over the world will be tight on cash. And as they're going to be tight on cash, what they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, please stay at home, 50% of you or 70% of you stay at home. And I'm going to let go of my office space. So a lot of realtors and people who hold commercial property will be pretty much in trouble. And I guess as a result, there'll be lots and lots of legal battles all over the world where people will talk about something called force majeure, where those are the kind of legal clauses people use to delay things. And there are those people who are working in industries that are in severe downturn will need to move to another domain. They will need to go off to a company that is going to do better. And they will need to reskill themselves. So very importantly, pretty much everyone around us, all of us who are sitting at home or not doing anything, we must work on reskilling ourselves into an area which is going to do better in the next 12 to 18 months. And all those people like me who are 65 plus need to really take care, because you should not take the risk of moving around too much. I guess even if you look at simple things like restaurants around us, they will need to relook at the way they run their businesses. A lot of them have started delivery services because they just can't open the restaurants. Now, Delhi's around are allowed restaurants now, but social distancing will be the norm and those kind of things will be there. And some of them might use technology like robots to actually serve you. So those kind of changes are going to happen pretty much all over the world. Tourism, travel industry will remain in very bad shape. And I think high contact areas like cruises will be pretty much in trouble unless they can come up with something so unique where people can live in bubbles. But I guess that's not going to happen. Sports, slowly, they'll start to open, but without any crowds. But you might see an IPL or you might see some cricket happening in the next 3 to 5 months, but without crowds getting in there. So they're even thinking of using technology to replace crowds. And that's very, very interesting, because they might put up huge screens in all these places where various people who are watching can call in and shout or say hello or say Sachin, those kind of things. So those kind of things are pretty much what are on the cards. Very, very different from what we have been used to. There'll be a major change in the jobs environment. And all of those who are looking for jobs or have lost jobs will need to think very carefully. I would say that if you have a job, and even if they reduce your salary, just hold on to it. Don't let it go. As new jobs in your domain are unlikely to come up, unless you are in areas like health, wellness, online education, e-commerce, etc. Or you provide staples. Okay, so those are the kind of things that people need to eat, so things will be there, the jobs will be there for people who supply staples. Most employees will start to change the way they keep their people and the kind of salaries that they pay. So they will probably move to a fixed plus variable model of salaries, because most of companies will not be profitable, their revenues will go down and their cash flows will be bad. So, and there'll be hardly any profits. So they will be all cutting costs. A lot of full-time jobs will reduce and companies will move to contract people or freelancers, and you will see what is called a gig economy becoming bigger and bigger in the country. Gig economy has been happening for the last 4 or 5 years, but I think it'll see a huge surge. Somebody will work for one company from 7 to 12, and he or she would then be working for another company from 2 to 7. And those are the kind of things that are pretty much likely to happen. So if you will see, of course, new jobs in certain scenarios, like healthcare will be in a big way. Wellness will be big. Telemedicine will be taking off for the first time. Telemedicine has been talked about for a long, long time, but I think it'll zoom up. Good news for technology professionals, because if a lot of people are going to work from home, technology will be needed more and more, and people need to be connected. I also believe that the rural India could recover faster, as fortunately the crops have been good, and monsoon also seems to be normal this year. So there will be many opportunities in rural India. It'll all depend on how innovative you are, how you are close to the ground, and what cues that you pick up. In electrical engineering, and some of you might be engineers, electrical engineering, there's a concept called looking at early signals that you get in the market. And you need to pick up early signals, and this is called noise to signal. You need to pick up your cues at the time it's at the noise level rather than at a signal level. At signal level, everybody will pick up ideas and cues, but at the noise level, smart people will pick it up. So look at this noise level of inputs that you get from the market and start to think of what you should be doing. Whether you're creating a new business or you are expanding your business, look around you. So I think if you look around you, just see what's happening in the rural marketplace today. Whole bunch of migrant labor are coming back or come back. How many of them are there? No one knows. The finance minister the other side, I don't know the number. All kinds of people are giving all kinds of numbers, but some kind of people are saying 40 million people, 60 million people, I don't know. If these people have come back to rural, what are they coming back with in addition to COVID? Everybody says, okay, these guys are going to bring COVID to my village. That's the negative part of looking at life. The positive part of looking at life is to say, you're going to see a whole lot of people coming back with a lot better skills than they ever had before. They'll be better off than a lot of people in the village. They will know a lot more. They've been exposed to working in very good factories or service areas, etc., etc. So what can we do for them? Could be a nice business idea. So what could be the opportunities? Can we look at converting them into micro entrepreneurs? And for example, if they are in a village and they are smart and they've handled machines and they've handled all kinds of electrical devices, you could convert a whole bunch of them into what are called digital home technicians. And so there will be a very large opportunity to actually retrain them into being digital home technicians who can then fix anything in the village or in that sort of a area that is around the village. And you could have people who could be trained on, fixing anything to do with solar. Or imagine one of the real problems of the villages is good, clean water. So can they set up water ATMs in villages? So there could be a whole bunch of these very well-trained migrants who are back, who could be very valuable to the society. So in a manner, the rural India can actually take off if they pick up to do a few things like this. I think our earlier president used to call something called Pura, and he used to say, we should try and bring everything that is urban to the village so that they don't need to unnecessarily move to the cities, because cities are so crowded and cities are heartless, aren't they? Haven't we seen that with all the migrants? The people who employed them said, thank you very much. I don't need you for the next 3 months. And some of them, very few of them actually paid salaries or made them stay back where they were. But a lot of them just gave up on them. And even our governments gave up on them. So it's a very sad state of affairs. So how many of them will go back after this such bad experience? So I think, interestingly, we could be creating a lot of industries around the rural India. And I think recently the government has opened up the whole farm sector dramatically. So there are a lot of opportunities for farmers to grow and to create food processing industries around them. And those kind of things are likely to be huge opportunities for a lot of them. And a lot of them who've actually lived in the cities have been exposed, and they could guide the local people into doing more than what they were doing. So very interesting situation. Also, there's a lot of talk about manufacturing moving from China, because not many people would like to buy Chinese products anywhere in the world or even in India. So a lot of movement will take place. People will need to reskill themselves. And a lot of these manufacturing companies may get set up in India. And electronics will be a very big area where I come from. And electronics will see a big surge. Lots and lots of jobs were destroyed due to globalization. A lot of them will come back. And therefore, because travel will be restricted globally, the domestic market will take off. So the domestic market is what has been the strength of India. Unlike China, China was very dependent on exports. We always sold more into India than sold abroad. So in a manner, that's going to help us. But reskilling will be very much required by everybody. And online learning will take off. And online learning is something that people need to really seriously look at. There are tough times for fresh graduates. And if any of you are fresh graduates or looking for jobs in today and tomorrow, I would say that go after getting more skills than what you have from the institute, because your current skills may not be good enough for you to get a job, because a lot of experienced people will compete with you. And hence, if you really want to make sure that you get a job, prepare yourself. Prepare yourself with more skills. And therefore, you will be, you're better off that way. I still feel the startup scene will remain good, but in newer areas, as funding will be limited, startups will need to work more on what I call aspirations. So I've always had this concept, which I learned from my guru, Dr. C.K. Prahlad, where he always used to say, A is greater than R. Aspirations are greater than resources. So if you have the aspirations, resources will happen. Okay, so I think even with less resources, you can create businesses. You should not think that मेरे पास लोग नहीं है, मेरे पास जगह नहीं है, मेरे फादर के पास पैसा नहीं है, वो सब कुछ नहीं सोचता है. अगर आपको काम करना है, करिए. Resources will happen. Finally, I also want to talk about my own experience of serious disruptions in 1990. The Janata government had just left. The country's coffers were totally empty. The country just had 7 days of foreign exchange. And we were manufacturing computers. A lot of components needed to be imported for us to make computers. There were no dollars available. So what do? Close down the company? No. We all decided that all of us will go and find friends all over the world who will help us. And we got some of our friends in Singapore, Hong Kong, all over the world to open up LCs for us to help us get components to be bought, despite the fact we could not open any letters of credits from India. So what happened as a result? We sort of became a more resilient company. And we also decided to deeply get into exports because we felt that just being a domestic company is not a good idea. So we went into creating a very big software company. And from a disaster, we learned a lot and succeeded in creating a new HCL. We started our company when we started, 6 of us started in 1976 with 1.86 lakhs. And that's all we had. But we had A, which is aspiration. And resource was 1.86 lakhs and 6 of us. But where are we today? HCL today is pretty much a 70,000 crore company. So it really doesn't matter whether you have resources or not. If you have aspirations, you can succeed in life. And before I end, I would like to say that today, unfortunately, the fear of the disease, in a manner, is more than the disease. We need to live with COVID, okay? We have to start going to offices and factories. We just need to take precautions. Most of those who contract COVID will recover. Only people like us who are in our 70s, etc., will need to be a whole lot more careful. Rest of us can start to look at life with less paranoia than what we have seen till now. And how can you keep on living without moving out of your house? How are you going to make sure that your body can have and can actually take care of more immunity if you don't move out of the house? So I think all these kind of things will change. Some of us will have the gumption to go out and do things. For example, China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, 100% of people are back in their offices. Okay, so of course China gave us the COVID, but all of them are back to offices. Their factories are humming and they are producing for the world. But few things will change for a long time. We have, during this lockdown, discovered that a lot of us can work from home. We really don't need to travel up and down in Bombay and Delhi and big cities and waste 3 to 4 hours a day. So I think what is happening is that 40 to 50% of the people will continue to work from home depending on their jobs. In some companies, it will be 80-20. In some companies, it will be 40-50. But whatever it is, every company and organization can decide on the way they are going to go. And the same goes for education. Education institutions cannot just be running online all the time. A lot of my friends' kids in the US are complaining. They're saying, I'm paying $50,000 for education inside the institute, and you are delivering me education at home. Why should I pay $50,000? So, you know, these kind of questions are coming up and they just can't stay closed. So I think these kind of things will change, and some of these things we will also need to realize that we need to have these occasional trips outside the office, outside the home. You may want to have 40-50% people working from home, but they must come to office someday or the other, at least once a week, twice a week, because that social interaction for human beings is important. How are you going to judge a person just looking at a video? You need to have some kind of a social interaction to judge how the person is doing. How are you going to evaluate people? How are you going to create culture of an organization with people sitting at home? You can't create culture electronically, I'm sorry. So I think rest of us will go to office and with few restrictions, and we start to think about living life a little more normally, keeping sure that you keep the restrictions in mind, because COVID, mind you, is going to grow in the next 2 months to 3 months. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. It's such a cracker of a session. I think you put a lot of reasoning around the uncertainty that confronts us in these times. I've taken a lot of notes. In the interest of time, I'm going to bunch my questions into 3 parts. And I think you made some very interesting observations that in this crisis, there is uncertainty and there are problems, but there are a lot of opportunities. And the first bucket I'm going to talk to you about, or probably question you on, is the entire emerging area that you talked about, which is rural, which is healthcare, which is wellness, and which is to do with India, and how some of these sectors will unfold and benefit India in the long run. And probably crisis has triggered our acceleration towards that area. And the question that I have is that once we start to look at these opportunities, we also need to confront the structural and economic realities of India. Now, for example, you mentioned about rural and rural economy, but it is also true that about 95% of rural households are dependent on some form of non-rural income, primarily on remittances, primarily on somebody working from that rural home. So agri income just by itself is not sustainable. And if so many people go back to agri and in rural, how do you sustain demand? Same is the case with, let's say, work from home. Homes are not designed to accommodate people working from home efficiently. So how do you see these structural and economic realities of India with respect to sectors that are glaring to us as opportunities? And how do we resolve this?
Very good question, actually, Ankur. I think structurally we need to change a lot. The way we have been working will not do anymore. We will need to rethink and reimagine rural India, for example. Rural India cannot remain just the way it was. You have seen a lot of issues in the past also, where Punjab used to get workers to come from Bihar, etc., etc. And that's the whole way that they could actually cultivate. Suddenly, when all this stopped, what do? They have to mechanize. So I saw a very interesting business model that a friend of mine developed. What he's doing is he's bought a whole bunch of machines for the farms. He rents them. And he says that each of the farm people can rent them for a day or two, and he'll come, he'll bring his people, he will do all the work and go away. In that case, they don't have to buy all those machines. So I think these kind of innovations will actually happen more and more. And I think that is what will spur the demand as well as the growth of the rural market. Because as I said, those 30-40% of people who no longer want to go back after that terrible experience that they've had, they need to be employed to do something. They can't just do this MNREGA. Yes, they'll get 208 rupees per day and they can work for 100 days, but that's not fun. I mean, they can dig up places for water and stuff like that. At least they're doing some sensible work for the last 4 or 5 years. Before that, all kinds of nonsense was going on in that whole area, where people were actually doing nothing and still getting 200 rupees, which was a terrible state of affairs, because you can't make people go on dole as a country. Then we are actually spoiling the people. You know, so these structural changes are going to happen. Entrepreneurs and smart people will discover new ways of creating new businesses in the rural market. And I've given some examples also.
So will it be fair to say that for entrepreneurs and for people who are seeking jobs, a new way to look at the opportunity is to look at areas where India has structurally faced problems,
Yeah.
how you can solve those problems rather than to look at it from a rigid framework of becoming a coder or becoming a sort of getting an IT job.
Right.
It has to become more evolved in terms of questioning, and then you can
Yes.
entrepreneurship opportunities. It's a fantastic example that you shared that somebody has started renting models of
Yeah.
mechanization in Punjab.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I'll give you another very interesting situation. Look at Facebook in the United States today. Facebook management has now told all its people work from home. That's what they were doing till now. Now they're opening up. But they're now telling 40-50% of the people to stay at home and work from there. But what people have not noticed is that they are saying, I'm not going to pay you valley salaries. If you are living in Atlanta, I'll pay you Atlanta salaries. So these guys are damn smart. They're going to make more money. Okay. But what will it do to IT BPO in India? BPO in India will be hit because a lot of these unemployed people in America will start to take these lower cost jobs and start to do BPO in America at a lower price than what we are doing in India. So what do we need to do? We need to create a BPO that sits inside rural India to compete.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's a huge change.
So as a follow-up on that, you mentioned about skilling and looking at job from the perspective of how many skills do you have, how you acquire skills. So do you think this entire higher education and pursuit of higher education will shift from a degree orientation that we have to a skilling orientation, something that happened in Germany, which is where apprenticeship of how many skills that you have and how those skills are practical and can be deployed. And I think it's more a mindset issue with parents, with students to make that shift to seek such skills. And then you are more future ready than perhaps right now the way we approach education. Will it be fair to say that?
Ankur, you've hit the nail on the head. This is my favorite subject and I can't talk about it for 5 hours. Because I'm chairman of the Electronic Skills Council and I've been telling the government for a long time, do a campaign to make parents aware that this degree business is nonsense. They should forget about degrees. They should focus on skills. After school, why does somebody have to go and do a BSc after which he or she is not going to get a job? Instead, why can't they go and learn how to work in an electronics factory? Why can't they learn how to repair phones? Why can't they learn how to be a caregiver at home for people who are aged? So, you know, so many of skills are available, and any of the people, audience who's listening in, they should go to the National Skills Development Council's website. And there are 36 different skills organizations who are members from different segments. They can go and choose which skill they would like to do. You know, for example, I have a niece who went to London and learned how to do facials. Okay. She came back and for weddings, she does facials. How much does she charge? 1 lakh.
Yeah.
So what's so bad about doing facials?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Would you earn that kind of money if you're a BSc?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, those are the kind of things that we need to tell parents that they're making a serious mistake by pushing children into degrees. They should get them into vocations.
This is such music to ears, sir. This is such music to ears. This is the kind of thought that needs. But at the same time, let me propose a counter thought as a question.
Yeah.
And when we talk about technology and we talk about AI, we talk about robotics, and we talk about the terms per se are so overwhelming at times And the counter that is often posed is that we are such a nation of huge population. Okay, we are inefficient, we are informal, but many of the current ways of doing business is actually a source of employment, and we can't be so disruptive. How do you reconcile to this idea that the future needs to move towards technology adoption for a nation like India, which always plays the card of labor arbitrage and too many people needs to be given a job? How do we reconcile to this reality?
It's a conundrum, but it's something that we have to face. We just can't run away from technology. Okay, look what's happened in the IT companies. They're no longer hiring those 50,000 people, 60,000 people, 30,000 people every year. They're hiring a whole lot less. Why are they doing that? Because automation has come into IT. What used to be done by people is now getting automated. You don't need to sit and do coding. It'll automatically code.
Yes.
So, these kind of changes you cannot do away with if you want to be globally competitive. So you will need to keep on creating new strategies which will work better. So for example, we discussed earlier that let's create more jobs in the rural area where people should not move to urban areas for those jobs. And we create a complete supply chain of food, for example. All kinds of things can be done there. The same goes for creating rural BPOs. All kinds of engineering capability, chota factories that can be set up. All kinds of little things can be done. You can provide power to people using microgrids. So all kinds of small, little lovely things can be done in the rural area, which will actually change the way the people work today and also give opportunities for more work. If you are wanting to transfer electronic manufacturing from China to India, and if you don't have Industry 4.0, which includes a lot of IT and automation, you will not be competitive.
Yeah, that's true.
Then those jobs will go to America, because America will totally automate everything and you will be just hanging around and getting nothing. So choice is ours.
So I would like to sort of narrate this very interesting news that happened about a week back, where Justice Chandrachud, the sitting Supreme Court Justice, he actually inaugurated a virtual court of traffic cases in Chennai. It's a pilot program that the judiciary has undertaken to introduce AI and technology in justice delivery. And just to carry on that thought, that not only from rural or supply chain or consumption, the structural issues which require IT, which require advanced technologies in India, I think the direction has been made in that, the pursuit is made. How do you see this entire area unfolding as far as jobs and technology is concerned, where some basic problems of India will get resolved, let's say justice delivery or enforcement, better law enforcement, better designs of the city? These are all new areas that will emerge. Do you think so? That may become as an opportunity for very high skill and specialized jobs?
My God, there's phenomenal opportunity there. We are 20 years too late. We have all the IT capability in this country. We don't use enough of it. And judiciary is very outdated. How many cases are pending for 30 years, if you know? I mean, they're just pending. Why should they be pending? Why can't technology help and increase the speed of justice?
Yeah.
And that's really what's required. And I'm telling you, it's not just the judges there, it's the lawyers themselves who don't want to embrace technology, because they feel by having face-to-face with the judge, they can get a decision made in their favor. So, all these human elements are sitting around, which are actually stopping us from doing that should be done. And I sometimes feel very frustrated. Why aren't we doing these things? These things should be done. And therefore, as you rightly say, many more jobs can be created, just delivering justice and using technology and having hundreds and thousands of courts all over the country, just delivering justice virtually. what is the need for you people to be sitting in offices and doing this? In any case, with COVID, you don't want to get into a courthouse in any case. Okay, so I think this is a great opportunity for us to change ourselves the way we are.
Really, I think absolutely, and I think this news, I was very encouraged when I was just researching for this session, and I think there was another news that the TCS has announced that 75% of its workforce will actually work from home in the next 3 years. And so TCS, after Indian Railways, is the largest private sector employer. So we are talking about almost 5 lakh people will actually be working from home. Now think about it from a real estate perspective, commercial real estate perspective, size of home, how cities are designed. Same is the case with, I mean, this entire migrant issue has thrown open the issue of slums and informal living. 40% of India actually lives in slums. We don't know how to design cities. And I think, again, that opens up. Now, with this context, you were at the forefront of the IT revolution in the 90s. And people say that we were perhaps at the right at the right place at the right time, and we harnessed a lot of that advantage in building the IT industry in the form it is today. If we have to take advantages in future of all these opportunities that we talk about, what should we do so that we don't miss the bus? And let's say 20 years hence, 30 years hence, we should not remind ourselves and say that, you know, we were blinded by our biases or prejudices or whatever, and we missed the bus. What are your comments on that?
Are you talking about IT itself?
Yes, sir. IT itself. I mean, you're talking about, let's say, you mentioned robotics, you mentioned AI, you mentioned new technologies, and which will help us to enable new markets and new jobs. Now, that exists both in India as well as abroad. And I think what happened with IT, where we became a leader, and if I have to absorb these new emerging technologies, am I doing things right as a country? Or so that we don't miss the bus and we create a new IT revolution 4.0 that you talked about?
You see, I've been a great proponent of both sides of the coin. Okay, so one side of the coin was software, the other side of the coin was hardware. And I personally have worked a lot more on hardware to make hardware happen in India, electronics happen in India, electronic manufacturing happen in India. I pretty much wrote the last electronics policy. Unfortunately, the government implemented it very badly. So now a new policy has come around in the last few years, which is now seeing movement of electronics manufacturing into India. But again, the thinking is a little warped. They are thinking of inviting large companies to India. Terrific. I want them to come. But how about the MSMEs in India? We must make sure that the policy also takes care of them, which the current policy doesn't. So I've written to the government yesterday and a few days ago, saying that this needs to be corrected. Because we need to make sure that we have all-round growth in electronics. We must design and manufacture in India. And the real value addition comes when you actually design in India. Because that's where our innovativeness and our intelligence and our capabilities as Indians come to the fore. So I think that is a missing piece which I have been pretty much after. Now look at the situation that is happening today with the telecom. Okay, Huawei wants to sell all over the world. America doesn't want them to sell. They don't want Chinese products inside their telecom systems because at the back end of this company is sitting the PLA. Okay, so they're very concerned. So what do? They said, we will not supply you semiconductors to make your products. They've just done that 3 weeks ago. Now, that's the kind of danger we are into today. We don't make semiconductors. We are a huge country. 15 years ago, I wrote a report to the government saying that let's start semiconductor industry in this country. A lot of my friends from the US were interested in coming and setting up here. But it didn't happen. So I think that other side of the coin is still to be shined. You know, as they say in cricket, ek side shine karo, ek side rough rakho. Wo karna hai hame. Dono karne hai. We need to do both. And that's when IT can be successful. So very interestingly, I will tell you, if you look at the large software companies, Wipro, HCL, TCS, okay, Infosys, they employ 10 to 15,000 people each in hardware design. And what do? They make products for the globe. They make nothing for India. So that capability exists. We're doing nothing with that capability. So those kind of opportunities are there for us to look at. And we must use those opportunities to create a new India.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. I think such wonderful thoughts. My last question, therefore, I mean, you mentioned, you talked about reskilling. So reskilling as a word will apply to people who have already sort of embarked a certain journey in their professional career, or they've finished their degree, or they are in the job market, and we are trying to navigate ourselves in this uncertain time. Now, what is the message that you would like to give to, let's say, parents of kids who are now in school, or people who started to now think about, after your talk, probably people will go back and so people who are kids who are in school, how should they be looking at the future that will confront us? And I think that will have an implication on parents and in the audience. And the median age of India is 25. And so half of India is absolutely less than 25. And I think not fairly represented in today's conversation, but surely will have some message. So rather than reskilling, how should they be looking at the future is my question.
Well, actually, what I would advocate for every kid to do is to learn programming and learn it with multiple languages right in school. Because tomorrow, when they go into any job, it'll be of great value to them. Okay? Because any job will have a component of IT.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a component of IT in your thinking, you won't be able to do your job. So look at a marketing guy today. If he doesn't understand data analytics and big data, there's no way he can do his job. Same goes for CEOs today. They can't do their job. So the first thing I would tell parents is that get them to do programming, get them to open up their minds. This whole rote teaching, rote learning that's been going on for years and years is not good for us. I think we need to open their minds, and a lot of online tools are available for them to use in addition to school teaching. Okay, so those they should encourage and sit together with the children and get them to open their minds. And lastly, don't let them think about degrees. It's not important for you to be an IITian. Why do you have to go and give those exams? Although, sorry, I've been chairman of IITs for 9 years. I shouldn't be saying anything against IITs, but why do you need to be just an IITian? Why can't you be a good guy here in humanities? There are lots and lots of opportunities everywhere. So a lot of children are pushed into saying, engineering karo, IIT jao, job to bilkul mil hi jayegi tumko. Arey job ke piche kyun ja rahe ho? Apni business kyun nahi create karte? So be an entrepreneur, grow, do something different, be different from your fathers. Because my father was an IIT, I must go to IIT is a normal thing. Okay, so these kind of thinking has to go away. Degree is all nonsense. People should not think of degrees. People should think, what do I really know? What can I do? What can I create? What can I invent? Those are the things we need to look at.
So 3 messages from your last question. Think programming, think skills rather than degrees, and think entrepreneurship.
Yes. Entrepreneurs create jobs.
Thank you so
Desperately
much.
need more jobs in this country.
Thank you so much. It's just so wonderful talking to you.
Okay.
Over to you, Preeti.
Thank you. That was a really wonderful discussion and talk. I mean, it was invigorating and engaging and also very, very hopeful. It's not all dark out there, and it was really wonderful to listen to the ways in which we can actually, open our minds to the new opportunities that exist, and which a lot of us maybe in all this doom gloom scenario that's been going on for the past 2.5 months, we've not really paid attention to that. So this really does shed a lot of light on the way forward as we come out of this crisis now. you talked about new strategies and new thinking, out of the box thinking. We need to recalibrate the way we think and the way we approach problems. So that's wonderful. And all this emphasis also on reskilling, on adding to whatever you already and to, and the fact that smaller initiatives, a lot of the stuff that's going on in the villages to strengthen our rural infrastructure, to strengthen the villages, maybe since we did take on Swachh Bharat, maybe again that's another thing to get from Mahatma Gandhi, that we start talking about the ideal village and Swaraj, and becoming more the village becoming complete in itself and all of that. So I've got a lot out of this wonderful talk and this really wonderful conversation. Ankur, thank you so much for all your questions, which led into many other areas. We heard about it in the talk, but then you sort of, carried on and took it all much further. And I think we've all enjoyed ourselves tremendously. Thank you very much. And I hope the audience also has enjoyed the conversation. I'm sorry we are not able to take on questions. But in the talk, in the chat room, I can see lots of other remarks and questions that have come up, which we will share with both of you later. And maybe if there is something to get back to on these people, we can, let them know. Once again, thank you very much from Majha House. And please put your names and mobile email down in case you do want to get further updates from us. Thank you.
I want to give a challenge to Majha House.
Ji.
My challenge would be, let's take this message from Majha House to all villages of Punjab.
Yeah, we
encourage
can actually
them to do this. You need to open their minds. It's very important that we just can't keep thinking that government will do this and government will do this. Forget about the government. Let's go and do something.
So even like there are a couple of new initiatives which we've started from Majha House, because the idea is to keep Punjab center stage.
Correct.
And to start reaching out to other audiences which we may not have done, because abhi tak we were only concentrating on Amritsar and the city and people from the city. Yeah. Now we are tying up with smaller groups that are working on the ground across Punjab. So there are people like the Young Punjab Leadership Program. There's Sanji Sikya. There's a bunch of craftspeople who have come together under the umbrella of Kirt. So things like that, where we've started something called the Punjab Dialogues, where we're talking about all the problems that Punjab faces, all the copses that we can count actually. And then one by one, let's try and talk about these and see what can be done on the ground. So 2 years after we started, this is actually what I think Majha House wants to do, and which is building these kind of networks across the state with many, many groups. And so that we do not just keep talking about things, but we also try and make them happen on the ground. And it begins from conversations and ideas from people like you. And so I'm really glad that you've talked about all these things. And definitely I'll try to get another thing going with the Sanji Sikya group, because that's a bunch of really energetic young people.
And Punjabis are so hardworking. I think you can really do great things.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And of course, you're our patron. So thank you also for being there for us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.